This segment sponsored by Foster Financial. Welcome to Money Monday with Foster Financial, where we discuss things that's happening around the world that can impact your finances. And today I'm joined by their Vice President, Caleb Doane. Hello, Caleb.
Hi.
Welcome.
Thanks very much.
Okay, so we've been talking a lot about what's happening right now in Washington, what's happening, and how it impacts us financially.
Yeah.
And so today we're going to discuss possible tax cuts, because that has been out in the flow of conversation.
Yeah.
So what should we know?
Yeah, so I mean, in 2017, people probably remember the tax cuts that happened there. So it shifted a lot of the tax brackets down. So if you were in the 15% tax bracket, you dropped down to the 12%. If you were in the 25% tax bracket, you dropped down to the 22%, which is always nice. You know, it's good to pay less in taxes, of course. We all like that. It increased the standard deduction too, so you got to write off a little bit more on your taxes. Well, that legislation, as it was written, was set to sunset at the end of 2025.
Sunset? What is that? Just slightly go down?
Right, yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Just, disappear across the horizon there. So basically, if new legislation isn't passed, then those tax cuts go away and everyone's tax brackets snap back up to what they were at before that legislation.
Interesting. Okay, so with these cuts, talk about what these cuts are possibly proposing.
Yeah, the idea is, okay, let's make those 2017 tax cuts permanent. So as opposed to having them, leave at the end of 2025, let's make them permanent, forever, so that if you're in the 12%, you just stay in the 12% until in the future when they decide to, raise taxes eventually, right?
Okay, but I think it's kind of interesting how they're saying like, oh, a tax cut. Well, the cut's already there, so this would just be a consistency, right? Just an extension, unless they let it fall or go back to be able to say we cut taxes again. Okay, I see what's happening.
It's kind of like, where's your starting point? Is it, before the tax cuts? So, and there are a few additional tax cuts in the bill as it stands right now. So it's only passed through the House. It still has to go through the Senate. And there are a couple extra things that they're adding on top of it, or at least attempting to add. And that's where we get, the no tax on tips, no tax on overtime. There's a couple extra deductions that they add in there for state and local taxes. They raise the caps. So overall, it still would end up being, a tax cut to folks, even with the tax cuts that were just extended from 2017.
That were already there. Yeah. Okay, so how is this a good thing for investors?
Yeah, so I mean, anytime we're projecting out somebody's financial plan, we're taking a look at how much they're going to pay in taxes. And so, of course, with the previous legislation, we were anticipating that tax brackets would snap back up, in starting in 2026. And so now we can project that they'll pay lower taxes over the course of their retirement, assuming that the bill gets passed.
Right.
So that can certainly help people's cash flow, which can be a very good thing. We generally, like tax cuts. If we get to pay less, that's a good thing. I'd say, people who maybe don't support the bill are saying that, maybe this adds too much to the deficit over the next 10 years. Maybe it doesn't do enough to, pair the reduction in taxes with a reduction in government spending. It certainly does some of that, but, some people would want more than that too.
Right, and it's like the tax cuts really does help like, the middle class. It really does help majority of people in the world. It's always so interesting when people have a hard time digesting that. And then there's like, of course, the most wealthiest folks in the world that don't pay nearly as many taxes as we do. So that's always just an interesting debate, I feel.
Right, yeah. Yeah, certainly. And I mean, the folks that we deal with typically are just, your everyday retiree, typically in Fort Wayne here. So, a lot of times we focus on how this is actually going to impact them. And certainly if you're, we're in the 15% tax bracket and you drop down to the 12% tax bracket, that's a big difference for you. And so, we like to focus on how it's going to actually impact everyday Americans and how we can project out their financial plan and see how it's going to benefit them long term.
Okay, so let's talk about something else that's in the hemisphere. So something that was possibly proposed by our president is the fact that through these tariffs, there's a possibility that it could eliminate taxes, income taxes altogether. That has been put out there. What do you feel is the likelihood of that, and how would that really impact someone's finances?
Yeah,
Should we be rooting for that?
I would say that that's probably more on the unlikely side of the spectrum there. Back in the day, that could have been something that was a possibility 100 years ago. Now the government has just grown exponentially over the last 100 years, and so the idea that tariffs could kind of pay for a lot of the entitlement programs and things like that we have, it's just not likely. And it seems like whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, or even all the constituents don't really seem interested in changing a lot of the entitlement programs that we have now, and those make up just a huge portion of the overall government budget. So I'd say that proposal is pretty unlikely to happen. As far as extending the 2017 tax cuts, I think that's a lot higher likelihood.
Right.
The Senate still has some issues with the bill, so we'll see how it changes before they ultimately vote on it.
Yeah.
But I'd put it in the more likely category that goes through.
Got it. Okay. And by entitlement programs, you mean like the Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, the things that the government has, funded through people contributing.
Right. Right.
It's always so funny. Entitlement is like, yes, you are entitled to it, but you also contribute it to it.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, well, cool. Well, I look forward to seeing how this bill kind of rolls out, and hopefully we can keep our cuts.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thanks for breaking it down, Caleb.
Thank you.
And if you would like more information about Foster Financial, they are here to help you with your financial planning. So you can just give them a call for a complimentary consultation, and I'll see you after the break. This segment sponsored by Foster Financial.